jury duty? Not really, it's just a joke. Do I have to bathe first? Can each of my personalities vote in the deliberation? All right. Listen, we feature speakers every year, and I'm going to start with Dr. Matt Hanka. He's an associate professor of political science at the University of Southern Indiana in Evansville, Indiana. Dr. Hanka earned a BA in History and Politics from the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., and an MA, more importantly, in Political Science and PhD in Urban and Public Affairs from our very own University of Louisville. He has served as the director of the Master of Public Administration program at the University of Southern Indiana since 2010. Dr. Hanka's research interests include housing policy, community development, urban policy and governance, strategic planning, and social capital. He's published his academic work in 11 different journals, been to over 40 academic conference presentations, colloquia, and presented at a TED Talk in Evansville in 2018 on permanent supportive housing. A little aside here, one of the fascinating accomplishments that Professor Hanka has been involved in is the tackling of the homeless problem right down the Ohio River here in Evansville. So if that is one of your issues, you really ought to check out what they've done in Evansville. It's just an incredible advancement they've made in the homeless problem in that particular city. A little smaller than ours, but it's not like the problem is drastically different. And one of my favorites, he's the author of a book called What is Happening in Your Community? ? Why Community Development Matters. And I'm gonna come back to that in just a moment. He's still working on a book about the merger of Louisville and Jefferson County governments. So we're waiting for that one to come out. Served as the director of the Commission on Homelessness in Evansville, as I mentioned, chair of housing organizations, and current member of the Evansville Affordable Housing Trust Fund Advisory Committee. And he didn't know I was going to do this, but I'm going to give you a quote from his book.
Oh, wow.
And this is take-home stuff, right? And thank you, Professor Hanka. Citizenship is about being ethical, moral, and attaining the higher good. It is a citizen's responsibility to make their community better. Join me in welcoming Professor Matt Hanka.
Thank you, Todd. I appreciate it. It's great to be back. This is my third time speaking on Law Day, and the first day it was 48 degrees on May 1st, so we were cold and moved inside. So thank you, Todd. Thank you, Amy and the Law Library and the Friends Law Library. So our democracy is under a lot of pressure right now. There's a lot of things, and both sides of the aisle, we are dealing with enormous pressure. We're dealing with a set of institutions that are dealing with a number of issues. And I'm going to go a little bit historical, kind of where we designed what we have now in many ways to prevent some of the things that we're experiencing today. So we go all the way back to our founding, and we created this cobbled together thing called the Articles of Confederation. And that's sometimes a little bit sort of forgotten. You know, we talk about July 4th and the spirit of 1776 fought a war, and then we were in the convention. But for 11 years, we were under this wonky system called the Articles. And in many ways, America might have actually ended before it began, because the Articles provided no authority to handle any kind of pressures or anything from the outside or the inside. It required, the primacy of the Articles were based on the states. The big problem was there was no centralized strong authority. The president under the Articles was weak. And in many ways, they overshot their hand by responding to a tyrannical king by creating a president that was very ineffective. And that president couldn't do a lot of things. It required the Congress to be unanimous in decisions. Congress was powerless in a lot of respects, but there wasn't this strong center. And there needs to be a strong center and a strong executive. So the Articles became such a mess, and some of you maybe in history know about Shays' Rebellion and these little skirmishes of the 1780s that prevented, in many ways, from really kind of moving along, and really kind of put our newest nascent United States sort of in jeopardy. And so folks from the Confederation Congress sent delegates to Philadelphia in 1787, with their intent to revise the articles, but once they got there, realized we need to scrap this and do a whole new thing. So we have a constitution, a whole new thing designed to solve the problems of the articles, but figure out a way to have a strong executive while also balancing people's rights, and not to have a executive that is too strong and too powerful. So how do we have a government based upon popular will, but how do we have a strong independent executive? And so many of the Constitution, that long, sweaty, hot summer of 1787, brought lots of different discussions, debates, and compromises of how we put this together. How do we have a strong executive, but how do we have an executive that isn't so strong that it becomes the king, the great king we departed from? So they asked all these questions coming together. Well, some of our framers were very skeptical about the people, and they wanted to have a check where they made sure that a president was elected, but not necessarily directly by the people. So I know when we learn in civics and we learn in political science classes, you have this constitution based on we the people, but at the time, the people weren't involved in choosing any of it. You think about that, the three branches of government, you have a House elected popularly, and even that was based on a limited franchise. The Senate was chosen by the legislatures because of the primacy of our states in our federalist system. You have an independent, unelected judiciary, and then you have a president that isn't directly elected by the people. So you have a lot of these undemocratic institutions in a way to try to create a system called the Constitution. We technically, when you talk about the United States of America, it is a constitutional democratic republic. Constitutional in the sense it's based upon a constitution, a set of norms and rules that are prescribed that we must follow. Democratic in the sense that it's based upon popular will and the choosing of it by our leaders through various kinds of democratic means. And then it's a republic in the sense that it is a blend of carefully designed institutions that check power off one another. So when coming together and doing all of this, it was figuring out a number of things that had never been tried before. How do we elect a president that isn't too tyrannical or too powerful? What is the role of the legislature? What's the role of the court? And so we designed this, and we know our Article 1, we put the legislature first because we wanted that institution to check the power of the president. But at the same time, we wanted a strong, energetic executive that had the power to do all the sorts of things that it can do under Article 2, and the power we've granted to the presidency throughout time through executive privilege and this, that, or the other. But the president is not a king, and he's not unilateral. His power is checked, and that was by design, and that was by compromise. So a lot of this is under fire because we have, as we're seeing today, we have a president who is choosing to maybe act in ways that are seen maybe as unconstitutional, depending on how the courts are decided. We're seeing now that the courts have looked at this as with Trump's tariffs, that maybe acting unilaterally is unconstitutional because of the power of the purse under the Constitution. So there's a lot of pressures here on a carefully designed set, and that's the thing about that long, hot, sweaty summer of 1787. Lots of compromises were made. Compromises were made to figure out what this thing looked like in the first place through a bicameral legislature. Lots of compromises were put together on how we picked the president. Lots of things were put together, compromised on how we dealt with the institution of slavery. And as we know with slavery, we kicked that can down the road and compromised it by many ways codifying the institution into our new set of institutions. So here we are, 240 plus years later, and a lot of that is under pressure because it was designed to prevent any one person from having total dominance over our system. Now, it can work, it's worked, if the very institutions of our American system do what their powers are told. If there is appropriate oversight, yes, checks and balances can be achieved all the time. Executive has an action, legislative comes in, and provides appropriate oversight into some of those actions. And we haven't seen a lot of appropriate oversight, at least in this year with the Trump administration or elsewhere. So there's a lot at stake here in terms of the future based upon just the strength of our institutions and the strength of our republic. That it works if we let it work and we follow the Constitution and we follow the law. That's not, that might sound simple enough, but I think some things I'll take away from, I think it's three things that I think are extremely important as Americans. It's to reclaim our citizenship. So thank you, Tom, for the quote I have of just being citizens and being aware of what's going on, being aware of the very thing we might stand out and protest. I think there's a lot of us here who don't, a lot of us in our society who aren't necessarily aware of a lot of the stuff going on. We don't really have strong civic education. We need to have a sort of 3 C's here. First is civic education. We really need to have that as a bedrock so we understand what's going on. We understand the essence of American democracy. We understand our constitutional democratic republic and all of its forms, all of its flaws, and we understand what it means to be a citizen. Now, we can be a citizen, but I'd say sort of a second point to that, we need to be civil in how we exercise citizenship. So yes, we are citizens, we know what it takes. But the second I certainly would focus on is civility. And civility is extremely important, but it's been lost over the last recent memory. We're not civil anymore. We can have the right to disagree and have differences, and that's important too. That's important too. To be good citizens is to engage in civil behavior. And sometimes civility is profoundly misunderstood. And it doesn't mean you always tolerate and let the other side talk without you saying anything. It's how we handle many of the differences that exist within our discourse. The right to believe anything doesn't necessarily mean one believes is right all the time, every time. And so we have to engage in a sense of civility where we respect other people's differences, where we encourage the discussion of other people's differences, and in many ways we understand other people's differences and other people's viewpoints better than our own. So we need to kind of come back to good civic education, the first C. Number 2, civility. And I think the third one I would sort of suggest to here is courage. That we need courage in our system right now to make the right decisions. That there's a lot of lacking courage right now where people are engaging in a system and maybe some of the decisions and actions are being made are wrong. They know it's wrong, but there isn't that courage and conviction to stand up and say, no, I disagree with this. No, we shouldn't do this. And so I, as sort of a political scientist and observer, hope that there's more courage because we're confronting legislation now, we're confronting decisions, and we have members representing us in Congress, not maybe locally, but there are members and representatives, senators, whatever, who are not showing a lot of courage in the decisions they are making that are going to affect us significantly, that could affect the whole sort of dynamic of what we are in this carefully designed thing. The Constitution amazes me. I study it, teach it, and it's amazing how, for many reasons, how it got to where we are today is still consistent. Is beyond me. The Electoral College, I gave a talk a couple weeks ago to the Alexander Hamilton Society, and that's another one of those head scratchers. Man, that has been a very resilient system for having a lot of the problems of the Electoral College. With all of its flaws and imperfections, it's still here. So I say that because we have a very strong Constitution, but we are potentially being confronted with some serious crisis that could upend all this. But we can stop that if we all do our part. We show courage by those that are in positions of power to say no when it's appropriate. We take action as citizens to make sure we are rightly informed on all issues, and we take action and we hold people accountable. And then when we hold people accountable, we aren't jerks about it. We're civil about it. We're respectful of other people's differences. Because we can make a difference. We can move the ball forward. We can become better. What's the theme today? Pluribus unum. We can become very strong and be one if we all work together. if we all have more pluribus, we're certainly going to have a stronger unum, right? To kind of use the, I don't know why, but yeah, but with that theme, it's important that we keep this strong and that we do good as citizens, and we follow along and we try to make a difference, and we're civil and courageous about what we do. So thank you for your time.
All right, Professor Matt Hanka, thank you very much. You know, we talk about the Constitution every year, and of course we have... Oh, okay. Well, we invite every year, and I think we mostly every year have a member of the judiciary. I want to recognize them as that. We always say the third branch. Why are they the third? Why aren't you the first? Maybe you should be the first branch. But anyway, when the rubber meets the road, and ultimately the question is this act lawful or not, particularly under our Constitution, whether it be the state Constitution or the federal Constitution, our statutes, we have a judiciary to answer that question. It's always amazed me, and I'm going to introduce our next speaker in just a moment, but here's one thing that she didn't put in her bio that I'm going to add, I think. I have always thought people get frustrated by Supreme Court justices. Oh, they're academics, they're know-it-alls, they're removed from the people. I have always thought the best thing to do, write this down, the best reform for Supreme Court justices is to have them be trial judges before they arrive at the Supreme Court. There's nothing like the day-to-day of individual cases that will make you wise when you are deciding things as a Supreme Court justice. And we are really honored today to have Justice Angela Bisig. She was elected to the Kentucky Supreme Court from our home county here in November of 22. She serves as the fourth Supreme Court district, that's us, Jefferson County. She's been a member of the Kentucky judiciary for 22 years. She is one of those rare Supreme Court justices who has served on every level in the Kentucky court system, district court, circuit court, and as chief judge of both of those terms. She is one of the two founding circuit judges in the Commonwealth who presided over cases in the newly formed business court. She worked as a juvenile court judge for many years. She was also near and dear to my heart, a founding member of the Restorative Justice Program, and we have several of those folks in different programs. It serves to rehabilitate juveniles, but also bring healing to crime victims. I know it's a big issue for Justice Bisig. She helped establish a special program called the Enhanced Supervision Docket, providing court supervision of domestic violence offenders. She also founded Jefferson County's only language and cultural immersion training for court system partners. And now, prior to her service on the bench, she served as an attorney for 13 years. That was 7 years as a prosecutor. She practiced civil law with the firms of Brown, Todd and Hayburn, and Greenbaum, Dahl, and McDonald. She is very involved in the community as well, and is on the board of directors of the Volunteers of America, many years on the board of directors of the World Affairs Council, and regularly hosts international delegations in her home. She served also on the boards of Dare to Care Food Bank, the Center for Women, the Red Cross, Sisters City of Louisville, and the Board of Trustees of the University of Louisville. And have to remind you all, she has been voted Judge of the Year by the Louisville Bar Association at least twice, and Trial Judge of the Year in 2021 by the American Board of Trial Advocates. She, of course, lives here with us, is married to Arnold Rivera of the Louisville Metro Police Department, has 3 adult children and 2 stepchildren. Join me in welcoming Justice Angela Bisig.
All right, good afternoon. I know it's hard to hear out here, so I'm going to try to speak loudly. It's great to be here with all of you this afternoon at Law Day. Law Day is a national concept. It's not something that only I'm going to maybe hold this. Can I do that, Tom? Can I hold it? Does that help? Okay. Law Day is not something that only happens here in Kentucky or only in Jefferson County. Law Day is something that was put into place back in 1958 by then President Dwight Eisenhower. He established Law Day as a national dedication to celebrating and reminding ourselves of the principles of government under a rule of law. And I believe, as our last speaker said and Todd said, the theme for this year's Law Day is E pluribus unum. That Latin phrase we've all grown up hearing quite a bit. E pluribus unum. Out of many, one. Out of many, one. We are a nation of many diverse ideas and beliefs. And we are able to live together and function together peacefully by the grace of our Constitution that was established in 1789, now a document that's about 250 years old. And it contains the tools that we need to establish a society where we can live together with our democratic norms and live as a peaceful people. And then we have our Kentucky Constitution. Our Kentucky Constitution was established just a few years later in 1792. Our most recent version is the 1891 Constitution, which my colleagues and I, so there are 7 of us on the Kentucky Supreme Court, unlike the 9 you have on your federal Supreme Court, we interpret that Constitution. My staff attorney, Adam Neal, is out here with me today. He and I are in dusty books sometimes trying to look at what our founders meant when they were drafting that document. But Law Day celebrates these constitutions, our state and federal constitution, what unites us as a people, and it really does celebrate and call upon citizens. There are a lot of our law partners out here in the park today, but average citizens to educate themselves on civics and the rights that we have as Americans. Before I go further, I just want to introduce a couple of those law partners that are out today. I know Missy Hyde is here on behalf of Mike O'Connell, our county attorney. We have our Commonwealth attorney represented out here. Also our circuit court clerk, David Nicholson. David, you want to raise your hand? And his first assistant, Missy Chapman. Missy, you want to raise your hand? I want to thank Amy Hilliard, Sue Weddle, the folks from the law library and their board who help put on this event every year. And then I see so many organizations represented, from the Office for Women with Gretchen Hunt, the law school. I did some work interpreting for Catholic Charities years ago, and you all do such great work in our community. League of Women Voters and the Women Lawyers Association. You know, it's great. When I started law school, it was announced by then Justice William McAnulty that I was the first law class that was 50% women and 50% men. And then as I went through my career, I have the honor of serving on the first Kentucky Supreme Court ever that is 4 women, 3 men, so the majority women. And I think the Women Lawyers Association, it allowed, when I was a young lawyer and we were disproportionately represented, for us to have a forum to talk and communicate. So it's wonderful to see you here. CASA, who represents children in our courts, the Legal Aid Society, who makes sure folks have access to justice. There's so many good justice partners out here today. So the concept of popular sovereignty, that's known to pretty much anybody who studied physics, but it's really the idea that the ultimate power in our society, the ultimate source of that power, is the people. That we are the individuals who govern and agree to be governed by consent. There's a balance established between 3 branches of government. I like your point, Todd, that maybe we could be number 1, although I think we're Article 3, so that's where we get the number 3. And I always say the judges are the most quiet branch of government. I have to be elected to serve on the Kentucky Supreme Court, but when I'm out campaigning, I don't talk about issues and values, because issues that come before the court, interpreting laws and interpreting the statutes, have to be ruled upon by someone who is neutral and detached. So I say we're the quiet branch because we're not very exciting to watch campaign. I don't get up here and thump this podium and talk about the way things ought to be and the policies we ought to live under. Instead, our role in the judicial branch is to take that awesome document of our Constitution or our state constitution and make sure what the other branches have done fall within the confines of that document. The ultimate, and perhaps not to get too deep in the legal weeds this morning where you can't hear me very well, but the ultimate and perhaps the most important Supreme Court case ever, you may have heard the name of, was Marbury versus Madison. I like bringing up that case because there are hints of it even as we live in democratic governments today. Marbury versus Madison, my law interns over there, I hope you all know this case, is the first case where the United States Supreme Court established that it could review the constitutionality of the laws enacted by the other two branches of government. And just for a quick overview, it was back in the days in 1801 when Thomas Jefferson was becoming president and John Adams had been president. Before he left office, he established the Judicial Act of 1801 that packed the judiciary with supporters of his. He was a Federalist at the time, and he hoped that if he packed the judiciary, his way of government would sustain, even though Thomas Jefferson had been elected, who was a little more of a states' rights believer. So Mr. Marbury was one such judge who was appointed, and back at that time, James Madison, who was the Secretary of State, held his judicial appointment, wouldn't give it to him, so he sued through the United States Supreme Court and said, give me my judicial mandate. And the Supreme Court, with a little bit of trepidation, because our court systems don't have an army, we don't have a police force, we don't really have a forceful mechanism to ensure that what we say is done. Which is why you hear talk of a constitutional crisis when one of the other branches thinks of not listening to the judiciary. But the court, all members, led by Chief Justice John Marshall, believed that that act of packing the courts was unconstitutional and said so. And although that theory was in our Constitution, it was the first time it was applied in practice. It was so rare at the time, it wasn't done again for another 50 years. And the reason I bring that up is in a healthy democracy, a healthy rule by the people, all three branches of government need to work and do their job. All three of them do. And that creates a little natural tension where you're going to hear branches of government disagreeing with other branches. But we learn lessons from that. And as Todd said when he made my introductory remarks, I am a student of international law. I love cultures, I love languages, and I've worked through the years with our World Affairs Council, which has given me the opportunity to travel and look at judicial systems in other countries. And just two quick examples. About 8 years ago in Poland, the Law and Justice Party took over. And in Democracy 101, the first thing that party did was appoint 3,000 new judges in their court system. They forced a retirement age of existing judges of 65 for men and 63 for women, because they were giving women 2 years extra credit since they had to have babies. Very odd. The citizenry protested in Poland so much, realizing that taking over the judiciary was assuming ultimate authoritarian power in that government. And the European Union ultimately voted to withhold billions of dollars in aid from Poland because they found, as a democratic nation, that an attempt to take over the judicial branch, run over the judicial branch, was against every democratic norm. As recently as 2003, when Benjamin Netanyahu was elected prime minister in Israel, I don't know if you remember this, but he proposed a series of judicial reforms, primarily which was to eliminate the Israeli Supreme Court's power of judicial review. when that took place, massive protests happened by the Israeli citizenry out in the streets. So much so that he had to put a pause on those reforms. And I give you these examples from other places to underline and underscore the importance in a democracy of a neutral and independent judicial branch of government. And that's one of the things that Law Day is here to demonstrate and respect. Throughout our own history as a country, our government has had its ups and downs. And it seems like today, as citizens on political issues, we're pretty strongly divided. But it's our rule of law and our citizens' united belief in their willingness to just put a shoulder behind a government that follows democratic norms that allows us to sustain. So we the people, the preamble to our Constitution, it talks about we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, a better place for all of us to live and work and love. The first thing in that preamble is establish justice. And Law Day is a reminder for all of us, because most of the individuals I see here are involved either as a lawyer or a judge or a justice partner. I think we have a responsibility, a civic responsibility, to make sure we are espousing those important democratic ideals. We must listen to one another. We must listen to people whose viewpoints are different, but also educate ourselves as to the importance of our democracy and the role that the rule of law plays. And I guess thinking through that, I just wanted to highlight a couple of issues that are coming before. I won't talk about issues before me, although there are always important issues before your state Supreme Court. Before our federal Supreme Court, just some issues that are before the court right now. President Trump's executive order regarding birthright citizenship, that's before our Supreme Court, and how birthright citizenship is defined under the 14th Amendment of our Constitution. They're considering whether a weapons kit, not a fully formed weapon, but a weapons kit, which would allow someone to assemble a firearm, is subject to our Gun Control Act of 1968, which requires a federal license to sell a firearm and maintain records. So the court will be deciding whether a gun kit is a firearm. There's an issue that's come to the High Court out of Oklahoma where a school board, a local school board member Lister, made a contract with St. Isidore of Seville under their state school system to operate a charter religious school. The state Supreme Court of Oklahoma, so this is an example of when a state issue gets all the way to our U.S. Supreme Court, found that it was a violation of separation in church and that they couldn't have such a school, and that issue will be before our High Court. All of this is to highlight that things that really impact all of us in our daily lives are impacted by what we all do in the law. And I think Law Day is an excellent time. We get caught up in the minutia to refocus ourselves on the bigger picture of what we all are trying to accomplish as we work in our various areas of the law. I thank all of you for being here today. I know you have a busy day. The weather is beautiful. I don't know how you did that, Amy. I'd ask you to do your part, to put a shoulder in and lean in when you're in part of civic discussions, to talk about the rule of law and talk about the importance of an independent judiciary. We all need to do this to continue to protect our democratic way of life. We are the guardians of the law. Our young lawyers will be our future guardians of the law. And in order to continue to live in a prosperous, peaceful, and successful society, I am honored that we continue to celebrate Law Day, that we continue to acknowledge the importance of the rule of law in our society. Thank you all. Sorry, I took that out.
Justice Angela Bisig, everybody. Thank you very much. I told you it'd be good. I think we're going to have some more from the band here in a moment, so hang out. Is that right? He guesses. The Wandering Minstrels will be back up. And I'm going to stop talking. I just have to throw this in. Every year, civility comes up somehow. And I think it was a theme one year. But Professor Hanka brought that up. So I'm going to read you my favorite list of civil things. This is George Washington walked around with a little set of handwritten notes that he wrote at age 14. He had a classic education. I don't know, it went much further than that. And part of what he was required to study was the Stoic philosophers, Cato, Diogenes, Marcus Aurelius, and so on. So he distilled these things. There's 110 of them. I'm not going to read all 110, but I'm going to read my favorites. So this is that, George Washington, little notes in his pocket. Reminder to himself, in the presence of others, do not sing or hum to yourself or drum with your fingers or your feet. I guess you also should think, like, what national leader exemplifies the opposite? No, I'm not going to. So the George Washington list. Do not sleep when someone else is speaking, or sit when they are standing, or speak when you should be quiet. This is the George Washington civility list. Do not walk on by when others stop. Do not shift around in the presence of others or bite your nails. At the dinner table, do not laugh too much, do not scratch, and do not spit. Okay? Do not blow your soup at the table. Wait until it cools of its own accord. Do not talk with food in your mouth. And if you visit the sick, do not act like you are a physician if this is not your occupation. So, okay, that's right. This is the George Washington list of civil activities. One of the things I think is fascinating about civility in government and law is that who knew until somebody started breaking a bunch of them that we had a system that just relied on people doing the right thing and being good people and knowing what the rules were, right? The unwritten rules for being good people. So apparently not everyone learns those things, and we're learning that now. And my final one is a quote from Gloria Steinem: "The truth will set you free, but it will probably piss you off first." So we're going to have the Wandering Minstrels back.